Pei al halacha hey. May raglei behema v'chaya hatahir. Okay, urine from a kosher animal, or behema or a chaya. The Shulchan Aruch have 4 cases. The first case is urine for chalav or milk, or mei chalav, or mei chalav. We'll talk about what that is in a second. Shalahem, their mei chalav, mutter. Those are mutter. Okay, mei chalav, their whey is mutter. And also the Meimei chalav. I'm going to explain what those 2 things are in a second. So he had 4 cases. The meraglayim, chalav, mei chalav, and mei chalav are all mei chalav and Meimei chalav. I'm sorry, those 4 things are mutter from kosher animals. The yesh misha osid, and there are those who aser. And the Rambam sticks in by minhag Kosher Rishona. The minhag is like the first shita that those 4 things are all mutter from kosher animals. Okay. So now, it's obvious that when the Shulchan Aruch says the second day that said yesh misha oiser, he didn't mean all 4 cases, right? Because one of the things that was in there was chalav. Okay. What did you say? Well, so it says chalav is one of the cases. I mean, if chalav is one of the cases, obviously chalav from kosher animal is kosher. So that's not what it doesn't mean. He doesn't answer all the cases. Okay, and we'll see later that Meimei everybody agrees also is mutter. So which case is he talking about? So the Shach says he means is the case of Meimei chalav. I'm going to explain to you what that means in a second. He says in the case of Meimei chalav, there are others who question that. There's a shaila how to read what the Taz says, but the assumption is that that's what it goes like the Shach. That the Machlokes has to do with the very last case, which is Meimei chalav. But the other 3 cases, the meraglayim and the chalav and the mei chalav, everyone agrees that those are mutter. Okay. What?
Meimei chalav is a byproduct of mei chalav, isn't it? Isn't like so how do you get from it being kosher to it being not?
Okay. So I wasn't going to talk about that, but the Poskim speak. It's possible. We're going to explain why it should be usher, but it's possible that chalav could be mutter. But a product of chalav could be usher. As strange as that sounds, okay, that is straight. But can talk about that. And they have other examples in other dinim where one thing kosher comes from treif, or treif comes from kosher, even though it seems strange to us. Okay, so when we learned kuf tesvav, we saw this word mei chalav is from a Gemara. The Gemara says in Chulin that if a person cooks meat in mei chalav, if you cook meat in mei chalav, it's not possible chalav. At least midrash. It's not possible chalav if you cook meat in mei chalav. Okay, there's a Machlokes over there, Machlokes Rishonim there. What does the Gemara mean when it says the word mei chalav? What is that referring to? Okay, mei chalav means the water from milk. Okay, the water like a byproduct of milk. So some hold, and this is brought in Siman Pei. Some say that it means is when you make cheese, so the curd, the solids separate from the milk, leaving behind this grayish liquid, which we call whey. And that grayish liquid that's left behind is the mei chalav. It's the watery part of the milk. If you took out the solids, you leave this watery part behind. Okay, it's like a dirty.
Some people call it Meimei chalav whey, or there's nobody there.
No. So that's what some people say, and other people say that no, that's not mei chalav. That's chalav also. When the Gemara says that if you cook mei chalav in meat, that's not possible chalav. It's talking about if you take that liquid, the whey, and you heat it, or nowadays we filter it, and you get out certain solids out of that. You get the whey protein out of what we call the whey, that whole liquid. You get the protein out, the second protein, the whey protein out of that. The water that's left behind after that, that's what's mei chalav. That's mamish watery, that's mamish water, that's the mei chalav that the Gemara is talking about. It's a Machlokes. It's a Machlokes what we do. It's in Pei Zayin, it brings both Peis abroad. So in our Shulchan Aruch, it uses the word. This is a new term called Meimei chalav, okay? Because there's an ambiguity as to what the word mei chalav means. The Gemara uses the word mei chalav. It's ambiguous. Does that mean whey, or does it mean the water that's pulled out? What we call it permeate. We call it. The way we do it, we call it permeate. So because there's a question, so the Shulchan Aruch uses the word mei chalav to refer to whey, and Meimei chalav to refer to what we call permeate. Okay, so but the word permeate, because nowadays when we filter that whey, and the liquid that permeates the filter.
Permeate is the liquid that's left after you remove the whey protein.
Right. What happens is when you push the whey through this very fine filter, the liquid permeates the filter. And the stuff that's left behind is called the retentate. The stuff that's left behind, that's retained by the filter. So what the mei chalav is, what the Meimei chalav is this permeate. In the days, the way the Rosh explains it, they used to cook it. It's the same idea. You get the solids to separate from the liquids. We do it by filtering. We call that permeate. When the Shulchan Aruch uses the word Meimei chalav, he's using that that's like a way to be more clear and say you mean is the permeate, as opposed to the mei chalav you mean the whey. Okay? Even though, again, those are both coming from a Gemara, but that's how the word is used. The Poskim over here talk about, they say, they even mention, it comes up, it's in a documentary, it says, that, like, nobody uses Meimei chalav. It's like garbage. So why are we even talking about this thing? So that's what they talk about. Is it against the
Meir Lion?
Okay, that's a fair way to say it. The documentary talks about it because there's a shiloh whether it's brought that the mini is a certain way. He's like, well, the mini, anybody eats this stuff? Okay, so anyhow, that's what he talks about. But Lamai says nowadays we do eat it. Okay, nowadays we do eat it because what's left in that liquid, there is one thing valuable that's left in that liquid, and that's lactose. Okay, so lactose is in, that permeate has the lactose in it. Lactose is the milk sugar. It doesn't get into the cheese, and it's not in the whey, and it's not in the whey protein that we pull out of it. It gets left behind in that liquid. So the shaila of whether lactose is kosher or not kosher is this thing. Okay, this Machlokes, the Shulchan Aruch brought 2 days whether Meimei chalav is mutter. Who on earth cares whether Meimei chalav is mutter? Nowadays, could you eat lactose or could you not eat lactose from a kosher animal? Depends on this Shulchan Aruch right over here. And the Ramah says it's mutter. The Ramah says about minute kisor rishona that we make that Meimei chalav is kosher. Meimei is
kosher. Yeah. Why would if the Meimei chalav and the chalav is mutter, why would the Meimei chalav be usher?
I'm going to explain that. That's what I'm here to tell you about. What? No. You milk the cow in front of you. You make cheese out of it. I'm going to talk. That's what I'm here to tell you what the shayla is.
Drink the milk. You could drink
the whey. You can make good bodybuilders. You can
as to whether
the Meimei chalav,
the protein from the whey, whether what's left.
I'm going to explain to you what the Machlokes is. So far, I haven't gotten to what the Machlokes is. Right, I haven't gotten there yet. But first, I'm just explaining to you. First, I'm explaining to you what it says.
Meimei chalav Yisrael.
Yes, it's called so you milked it yourself, and you made cheese out of it, and then you cut out the whey protein for your kid to be a bodybuilder. And now you're left with the lactose to make afterwards. Okay, that's all.
We're all curious.
Okay, so again, so just before we explain why, look, our Shulchan Aruch is talking that is lactose kosher. Is it possible for lactose to be kosher? Rabbi Nias actually just banged into the other day someone who told him that all lactose is treif. Obviously it's treif. He must hold like the first day in Shulchan Aruch, yeah? But
second day.
Second day. Okay. He didn't know for beats. He didn't know anything. But anyhow, like the second day. Anyhow, in fact, that guy's own lactose happens to have been kosher. But anyhow, so that's what our Shulchan Aruch is saying. The Mechaber has 2 days of lactose is kosher, and the Ramah says that the minig is like the first day, which look Mechaber also holds like that's his stam, that the din is like that lactose is kosher. Okay. So now, we have these 2 dinim, okay, and there's 2 ways to understand what the Machlokes here in this din. Why should there be a shayla about it? Today we'll talk a little bit more on the theoretical side, but next time we'll talk about 2 applications that sort of depend on this shayla also. Okay, there's going to be a machlokes. What's going on here? Why is it maybe mutar also? What's the shayla over here?
You can't say that the heter for milk is going down from a pasuk. So once something's not considered milk anymore,
we're getting it. Very smart. Okay, we're getting it. Good. Okay, so the first day is the way this whole shayla starts from is that Aruch talks about it. He brings 2 days, and he says. Some people say that when the Torah says that milk is mutter, and the Torah tells us that eggs are mutter, so in our case we're talking about the milk. Milk is mutter. Milk is only mutter. You walked in just in time, just for you, something special for you. The milk is mutter. The Torah tells us that milk is mutter. The Torah only meant to say the milk itself is mutter. Okay, but if you have something that's not really the milk itself, that's not mutter. Anything that's not the milk itself is not mutter. And therefore the Machlokes is the Meimei chalav, this lactose that you pulled out of the milk, is that part of the milk or it's not part of the milk? Maybe it's we even call it like the water left over from the milk. It's like so not part of the milk that it's not included in the Torah's heter. Okay? With the Torah is not a specific thing, but this thing is too far removed from that. It's such a, not milk part of it.
Cheese is?
Stop a second. The Gemara said, if you cook that stuff with meat, it's not possible chalav. Okay, that's how not milk it is, that if you cook it, it's not with the rice, it's not possible chalav. So that's considered so far removed that it's not considered milk at all. And the way, that's correct. That's
the meichol. If I cook it in meichol,
well, the Gemara uses the word meichol, but that word, it's a machlokes. What does the Gemara mean by that? Does it mean cook it in whey, or does it mean cook it in lactose? That's a machlokes. It's not my fault. It's peizayin. It's a machlokes. Whether that Gemara.
Noodles are
Some people think that even if you cook it in whey, it's not possible chalav. Okay? We don't possibly. We're machmir and say that no, it's only if you cook it in lactose.
Don't say lactose.
No, it says Meimei chalav.
Meimei chalav, which means I thought it was separated.
You missed it. Yes. Okay, we took. It means lactose. We'll share afterwards.
Why is cheese mutter?
Very good there. Hold on a second. Okay, so now, before I talk to you about cheese, I just want to throw in here.
Let's just define terms.
Okay.
We start Meimei chalav, so we said, we first define it as permeable. What nowadays is the permeable.
Yes.
So that this happens to contain the lactose.
Yes.
Okay, so it's not that Meimei chalav equals lactose.
Right, but in our terms...
Which we're going to extract the lactose. The lactose is part of that substance.
Yes, correct. We just use that because practically that's the thing that we talked about, Okay, so now, I have to just tell you, this is an aside, but I saw it in looking through this din, I saw this tshuva, so it's just worth mentioning. I saw a tshuva from Rabbi Yashiv, who says, he brings some Knesset Gdola in Siman Kuf Tezvav, that says that Meimei chalav is so not considered part of the milk that the halacha of chalav Yisrael doesn't apply to it. Okay, the halacha of chalav Yisrael only applies to chalav, and doesn't apply to things that are not chalav, and therefore we actually saw it when we were in Siman Kuf Tezvav talking about cheese, that maybe cheese and butter are not included because they're not chalav, even though they're made from milk, of course. But he says that Rabbi Yashiv seems to line up Lamaisa that lactose doesn't have to be chalav Yisrael. Okay, it's not milk. It's so not milk that doesn't have to be chalav Yisrael. Okay, so that's really an aside. But it's the same concept that we're talking about here, that it's maybe not considered. The Rosh learned that's the Machlokes. Is maybe chalav part of the chalav or is it not part of the chalav? Okay, so now the Gemara, the tzad to say that when the Gemara said if you cook Meimei chalav, I don't want to say, but we're using that word. The Gemara said when you cook Meimei chalav with basar, it's not basar b'chalav. Some learn that the Gemara is telling you that it's not meat, that's not chalav. That's what the Gemara is saying. And others say that it's because the pasuk says l'savasha gedi b'chalev imay, and so the Torah only asks basar b'chalav if it comes out the k'moi sheyotzeh me'imay. Okay, the way that it comes, the way it comes out from the mother, and it's a special exception in basar b'chalav that it's not considered basar b'chalav if it's not like the mother. Maybe the Gemara only means it for basar b'chalav to get in him, but for everything else it's the same. That's the shak. Okay, so now Chasam Sofer asks on this Rosh. Chasam Sofer agrees with the Rosh, but Chasam Sofer asks on the Rosh. He says, if it's true that when the Torah said you can eat chalav, it only meant the chalav itself. He says, so how do you know that you can eat cheese? Okay, if it's not pure cheese, he says, well, but the Gemara brings a different pasuk. The Gemara brings a number of psukim to tell us that you can eat milk. The Gemara says, how do we know you can eat milk from kosher animal? And one of them is a pasuk that says you can eat cheese. Okay, the Gemara has psukim that say you can eat cheese. So he says, well, according to the tzad that you can eat cheese, the pasuk you can eat cheese, maybe the pasuk is only matter cheese, maybe it's not matter milk. In other words, if we take it so literally that only what the Torah was matter specifically, that's what you can eat. Well, maybe one pasuk says only milk says milk is. So how do you know cheese is? And the pasuk says cheese. How do you know that milk is? Okay. So now, when I saw that, that's what I said. Hey, that's why we have two psukim, one for milk and cheese. But I don't know why. The Chasam Sofer doesn't buy that. He says it's not true. No, don't say one pasuk tells you milk and one tells you cheese, and now you're off the hook. I don't remember the cheshbon. Okay, he doesn't buy that. Okay, so he leaves the question just open, like so. Taka, according to these southern, why don't you say that you also have to? This is only. The ones, this whole shaila of the Chasam Sofer is only according to the Machmirim. According to the Mekilim in our din, who say, which is what we did pass, and that it's mutter, they say, even Meimei chalav is mutter, that means as we understand that, okay, I'll take that back. Okay, forget it. Next. So that's what the Rosh says. The Machlokes is whether Meimei chalav is part of the chalav or it's not part of the chalav. Okay, the Shach over here brings this Rosh. Okay, the Shach says he doesn't buy it. Okay, he says, we don't need it, that's not Pshat. He says the machlokes of these 2 days is not whether Meimei chalav is or is not part of the chalav. He says no, of course it's not part of the chalav. You see that in the Gemara. The Gemara says if you cook it in meat, it's not part of the chalav. Of course it's not part of the meat. He says the shaila is the machlokes is when the Torah said that you're allowed to eat chalav, and the Torah said you're allowed to eat eggs. Was the Torah telling us that every yotzeh from a kosher animal is really kosher, or did the Torah only say these very specific things? If the Torah only meant to be matir milk, Meimei chalav is asur, because it's not milk. That's for sure. The Gemara says it's not milk. But maybe when the Torah says you could eat milk, it meant to say you could eat any yotzeh from a kosher animal. Okay, that's we should understand the Torah in a broader way and say when the Torah said you could eat eggs, it meant eggs come from kosher animals, and that's why you could eat any yotzeh from a kosher animal you could eat. Okay, that's what he learned the Machlokes. And then, so according to him, when the Shulchan Aruch Paskins and the Ramah Paskins that Meimei chalav is mutter, what it's really saying, it's not saying Meimei chalav is chalav. It's saying Meimei chalav is a yotzeh from a kosher animal. Well, yotzeh from a kosher animal is kosher. It's automatic. Anything that's yotzeh from a kosher animal is kosher. It's like a not milk. It's not milk. The Gemara says it's not milk, but it's kosher anyhow because it came from a kosher animal. What's wrong with it?
Everyone agrees it's milk, just one that's...
Everyone agrees it's not milk.
Not milk.
Everyone agrees it's not milk. The Shaila it is technically, it comes out of it, but is it, right, is in the Heter, is Yotzeh, in other words, I'm going to say it's not so accurately, it's a Yotzeh from an Avram and a Chai. That's the word Shach uses. It's not exactly accurate. Pri Megadim says he doesn't really mean that, but it's a Yotzeh from Avram and a Chai. He says, so maybe when the Torah says you can eat milk, I'm telling you, don't worry about Yotzeh from Avram and a Chai. Okay, the Pri Megadim modifies those words, but that's the Shabbat. That's a simple way to read it. It's Yotzeh from Avram and a Chai. Okay, so now once you hear that, you realize that the Rosh is saying exactly the opposite. The Rosh, who had a Machlokes, maybe chalav is mutter because it's milk. That means both of his days hold that Yotzeh from a kosher animal is treif. There's no heter for Yotzeh from kosher animal. His whole time is maybe it's milk. The only way to make it mutter would be to say it's milk. But if it's not milk, there's no heter. It's for sure not mutter. So according to the Rosh, for sure Yotzeh from a kosher animal is not kosher. Only unless it's chalav or beitzim. Hold 1 second. And according to the Shach, that's a machlokes. And since we're makel about that machlokes, we're makel to say that Yotzeh from we're makel to eat Meimei chalav means we're makel to eat any Yotzeh from a kosher animal.
Any Yotzeh from chalav from kosher?
No. From any Yotzeh at all from a kosher animal. When the Torah told us you can eat milk, it meant to say you can eat any. The issue of Yotzeh doesn't apply to Avram and Achai. Yotzeh applies to treifas and to behemoth tmeyas and all kinds of other things, but not to a kosher animal. Anything comes from a kosher animal is mutter. Okay, that's how we went to Machlokes. Okay. So it comes out, since the din is we're makel about Meimei chalav, so it comes out according to the Shach and the Rosh. Basically, Meimei are arguing about Yotzeh from a kosher animal that's not milk or eggs. Okay, it's not milk or eggs. There'll be some other Yotzeh. I'll give you some examples, more examples next time, really. Yotzeh from a kosher animal, according to the Rosh, it's going to be usher. Both days will hold it's usher. According to Shach and Machlokes, and we could be makel. Okay. So it comes out, we have a very serious machlokes. Depending on how we understand this din, we all can eat lactose. Okay, but the question is, is eating lactose indicative that all Yotzeh from a kosher animal is mutter, no matter what kind of Yotzeh it is, or is it special for lactose, because lactose comes from milk, and milk is the Torah says it's kosher. Okay, now, we have two cases right in our siman, not so practical, but there are cases right here in our siman that are examples of this din, and they are Halacha Gimel and Halacha Dalet, okay, which is, in Halacha Gimel, it's saying, so Halacha Gimel and our Halacha. In Halacha Gimel we said, we had this very unusual case, this Yalid Yachmurta. Okay? Yalid Yachmurta is this excretion that looks like a testicle. It's not really, but it is, that comes out of this female Yachmur. Okay? And the Gemara says really comes from an ayol. Okay? But an ayol and a Yachmur are both kosher animals. Okay? Ayol and Yachmur are both in the pasuk. Ayol tziv Yachmur, right? They're in the same pasuk, that those animals are kosher. So Yalid Yachmurta are mutter, according to the Shach, they're mutter because why not? They come from kosher animals. They're a Yotzeh from Avram and Achai and the mutter. Nothing wrong with them. Okay, according to the Rosh, they're not going to be mutter except unless they're Pirsha. Okay, but we'll talk about that in a second. And in our din, Meraglayim. Okay, what's the din of Meraglayim, from a kosher animal? Again, according to the Shach, Meraglayim is going to be mutter because it's coming out from a kosher animal. Well, it comes from a kosher animal, then it's mutter. Anything that comes from a kosher animal is mutter. Any Yotzeh from a kosher animal is mutter. According to the Rosh, it should be asur as Yotzeh, but it's going to be mutter. It's pirsha, but it should be mutter. But it will not be mutter. It will not inherently be mutter. It'll only be mutter if you could decide that it's pirsha. But if not, it's coming out of a kosher animal. Things that it comes from Avram and Achai. Avram and Achai is not kosher. So Yotzeh from Avram and Achai is going to be asur, according to the Rosh. Okay, so a couple of.
That's the question.
Yeah.
When they're Meraglayim, what is it utilized for? What's it for eating?
Well, we're talking about eating. This is Red Bull.
Does that make it not pure for them? It's supposed to any other type of
if you eat it?
I'm saying.
So the person can talk about it. Why isn't it not for shaykhs to eat it? It fell in by mistake. It fell in by mistake, so there's no action. No one's considering it to be medical.
Isn't the way we determine
a human is going to be much more than a cow?
So if this thing is considered edible,
it's not edible. It's not edible. So it might be mutter as pirsha. But as far as would it be mutter inherently, let's say it wouldn't be pirsha. Right. Would it be mutter? It's only according to the Shachas mutter. Of course, it's mutter.
People weren't drinking this stuff.
It's drinking by mistake.
It's not really made.
Did you by mistake?
So my question is the definition of is this defined as being pirsha? The way that we understand pirsha is Meraglayim really considered pirsha.
Why not?
So if it's edible.
If it's edible, then it wouldn't be pirsha. You're right. So the din here is not talking about you ate it on purpose. You ate it by mistake.
So it's not edible.
in the days of Shulchan Aruch, Yankee thinks it's edible, but in the days of Shulchan Aruch it wasn't.
I got to tell you, after the show, I'll tell you.
Thank you. Okay,
The story.
wonderful. Okay, so let's talk about some ideas.
So basically, the Chiddush of Rabbi Yashu also an afternoon. If you hold like the Rosh, the reason it's mutter is because it's an extension of chalav, then it would have to be chalav.
So would it have? So he said you could in the rush you could say it depends on the 2 days, but I think he's just saying is what Meimei is for chalav Yisrael. We saw that also. Let's even cheese is not in the Isra of chalav Yisrael. And butter, and the things that are not in the butter form. So this is even the Gemara telling us that it's for possible chalav, it's not considered it. So if we're going to be makel for that, so it's like easier to be makel. And surely according to the shachats, okay, but which it has an afkamin. I mean, whether lactose should be chalav Yisrael, that's a practical situation. Okay. So we have some rayas, in each direction to this Russian shach, and that is the first the Beis Yosef. Okay, the opposite to me. See, opposite the Yukim in the Beis Yosef, which way he goes. First is the Chassam Sofer points out that when the Beis Yosef brings the din that I mentioned to you, Halacha Gimel Yali Diachmorta. Okay, we mentioned this when we learned last time when we did that din. When he says the din of Yali Diachmorta, he says Umashma. He implies that it's the Gemara. He says Umashma that the reason why Yali Diachmorta are mutter is because they're pirsha. Okay, why is he saying that? He's saying that it's mutter because it's pirsha sounds like it goes like the rush. In other words, according to the shach, the reason why Yalad Yachmorta are mutter is because they came from a kosher animal. Big deal. They came from a yachmor. Big deal. Yachmor is a kosher animal. It came from an ayah. But milk teaches us that even
who says that in every case?
The shach learns that the mekilim in this din hold that milk taught us that every Yotzeh from Eivim Menachai is mutter. Any Yotzeh from Eivim Menachai. Torah told us about milk, but it's for everything. It's teaching us a rule that all Yotzeh from Eivim Menachai is mutter.
For example, if the...
For example, Yalad Diachmorta.
The Gemara says Yalad is mutter, right?
Yes, but the way we read the Gemara, it doesn't say why it's mutter. It just says it's mutter. The Gemara gives all kinds of vivid descriptions of what it is, but the Gemara doesn't say why it's mutter. Okay, the Rosh says the Beis Yosef says mashma implies like as if the Gemara said pirsha. I don't see it. Maybe I'm missing it.
No.
He explains all the gory details of how you make it, but no.
What is this, a chulin?
I don't remember anymore. Beats me. Okay, so but on the other hand, when the Beis Yosef says, how does the Torah know that meraglaim of a kosher animal is mutter? So he says, so the Beis Yosef says, now he knows it. He says, well, if Meimei chalav is mutter, then meraglaim is also mutter. Okay, what does he mean by that? And he says, and if you'd hold Meimei chalav is also, then meraglaim would be also. What is he trying to say? He's trying to say is that Meimei chalav, meraglaim and Meimei chalav are the same thing. They're both not milk, and whether they're mutter. If one's mutter and the other one's mutter. This is the Beis Yosef. When he says, how does the Torah know that meraglaim of a kosher animal is mutter? He says, well, it's dependent on that Machlokes. So that sure sounds like the shach. Okay, saying that it depends on the Machlokes is a shach way of looking at it. According to the Rosh, meraglaim had nothing to do with Meimei chalav. They had nothing to do with each other. The fact that Meimei chalav is mutter is a special thing about chalav. What has to do with meraglaim? Okay, so that implies that he learns like the shach. Later, the Beis Yosef says, no, it could be that even the machmirim about Meimei chalav will be mekel about meraglaim because it's pirsha. Again, he's saying maybe everyone is masking that meraglaim is mutter, but he's saying because it's pirsha, which is to say that the fact that coming from a kosher animal would not be enough to be mutter. Again, it sounds again like the shach. Okay. Okay. Other people say a raya. I forgot where I saw this. I think it was in a contemporary sefer. Say that a raya against the shach, because there's a machlokes. We talked about this. We talked about kitnish and shtana. A machlokes about whether musk is mutter. Okay, musk is something that comes out of a gland from a kosher animal, and there's a machlokes whether it's mutter or not. And the machlokes is whether it comes from blood. And there's a shayla that says, well, is it nishtana mutter or is it not mutter? It's not blood anymore. Now it's something else. It's this musk item. So is it mutter? Does that make it mutter or does that not make it mutter? So the fact that you're only willing to be mekel because it was nishtana implies that had it not been nishtana, had it just been come out of the animal without being nishtana, it would be usher. Okay, that's a diak to say not like the shach. That whole Machlokes Rishonim is revolving around whether is it nishtana or is it not nishtana. Is there a heter of nishtana or is there not a heter of nishtana? And that implies that otherwise it would be usher.
Okay, Tom.
What do you say? So that's the people who I saw it said it as if that's a right that it's against the shach. But I thought punk fakir. I think Rabbi Reese is trying to say. I thought punk fakir. The reason why the shiloh there is because it comes from dam. Dam is a specific yotzeh even from kosher animals that the Torah tells us is a streif. Even if all yotzes are mutter, we know one yotzeh we know that's not. Dam we know is not a mutter. So the riot punk fakir.
Dam is not a yotzeh.
Why?
Because the rain will come out of the animal. It's not supposed to come out of the animal. So leaf dam. Dam is a vein. Dam of an animal is don't do yotzeh.
And therefore what? So if this forms in like a gland inside the animal's body, and it came from dam inside the animal, so you think that's like an example, now it's a yotzeh. The dam is like basically like the basar of the animal, just like a...
I don't know.
Okay, so the way Yossi is saying it, the way he's saying it, it's right against the shach. Things. What are they arguing about whether it's nishtana? It's coming from the animal itself. It's just coming out of the animal. So it comes out of the animal from dam, from the basar, it's not coming from the yotzeh of the animal. Okay? You should on that. Okay, you should know there's a shayla, I'll mention, there's a Taki Tshuva in our Siman about there's a din that dam shebishloi is only asur midrabanan. So the achronim who talk about, well, maybe dam shebishloi should be asur mutter. Well, is there an issue of yotzeh on dam shebishloi? Why is dam shebishloi only asur midrabanan? Why isn't dam shebishloi a yotzeh? Because even though it might not be isur mitam dam, but it should be asur mitam yotzeh, not exactly like you're saying, which has to do with us. Okay. Let me move along. We're running out of time. We're really running out of time. Okay. The according to the Rush, who says that the only yotzeh that's mutter from kosher animal is the ones that Torah specifically says. So we understand why there are separate psukim for milk and for eggs. Okay, it's very obvious. We have to have milk and eggs because otherwise, if it only said let's say milk, eggs wouldn't be mutter because each one it's only mutter one thing at a time. According to the shach, we have a harder time understanding it. Why taka do we need psukim, separate psukim for milk and eggs? So now, the way the tune that I'm saying it now makes it sound like I'm asking you a question on the shach, but I really don't mean. I mean it the opposite way. Because when the first shir in Halacha Aleph, the first time we learned Halacha Aleph, we brought all kinds of Rishonim who talk about why do we need two psukim. Why are the psukim separate for milk and for eggs? Everyone who's talking about why do we need separate psukim is mashma shach. Anyone who would talk about why do we need separate psukim is implying that one pasuk would have been good enough. But why would one pasuk be good enough? That's only understood like the shach. The shach says if you have a terrorist being mati to eat a yotzeh from Ibn Melechai, then they're all mutter. So why do I need two psukim? So we have to have answers to why we need two psukim. The whole question of why do we need two psukim implies like the shach, which is one pasuk would be more than enough. According to the Rosh, we wouldn't have that question. Now I don't remember if the Rosh talked about the child then, but according to the Rosh, why should we need to have what's the shayla? Of course we need two psukim because every pasuk is matter another thing. And we need to have the pasuk v'yalei diach mordosa. Every one we need a that's okay. And one last thing, almost last thing, is when we're going to get to Halacha Tes, there's a very interesting raya from Halacha Tes about this Machlokes. We'll get to it. A very interesting raya. Okay, whether it's right or not, I'm not sure, but it's very interesting in here. Okay, we'll get to Halacha Tes. Okay, so now just one last thing is, really before I conclude, is the Pri Megadim gives a hezber for how to understand the shach. I'm not sure after we've heard all this that it's such a chiddush, but the Pri Megadim just explains what it means. He says the Gemara goes through like different stages. The Gemara says if chalav would be mutter, that there would be pasuk chalav is mutter, we would think that even chalav from a behemoth tvein would be mutter also. Once the Torah was matter chalav, it was matter all chalav. Okay? That's what we would have understood like that. In other words, when we would see a pasuk saying that chalav is mutter, we would take it expansively. We would say, well, all chalav is mutter. The Torah is telling you that all chalav is mutter. Then came along a pasuk by Gamo, from which we learn that chalav from a behemoth tmeya is not kosher. Okay, so the Pri Megadim says. So now, according to the shach, what happens is like this. So we have two psukim, and we have a choice. We can either say that just like two gzeres or kasavs, this chalav is mutter, this chalav is asur. We could just take it as is and nothing, and just take it as for the rules that they are. But rather, the shach learns that we understand this as a rule. We understand that these two psukim are teaching us a rule, and what they're teaching us is, we mentioned this once before. What they're teaching us is that the yotzeh from every animal is no good. The yotzeh from everything that's treif is no good. But the yotzeh from an animal, yotzeh from an isser that could possibly come off an Isser of Ever Menachai, which can come off like the Shechita, it's really considered Gemara, this idea that's special about Ever Menachai, that if you have Yotzeh from a thing, of an Isser that could come off, Yotzeh from that thing is not also. The thing, no, I mean, it's not exactly. It's the same idea, which is when we have something that's also permanently, like the behemoth Tameya, its Yotzeh is also usher. We have a Yotzeh who's only, so to speak, temporarily usher. It's only usher until something happens. Then the Yotzeh is not usher. And with that, he also explains why treifa. Why does it treifa? Why do we say chalav of a treifa is usher and not? Why do we say chalav of a treifa is mutter? It's how do we know which way to put chalav of a treifa? Okay, it's a shiloh in the Tosis, actually. We have a shiloh in the Tosis. If we have a pasuk that chalav from a cow is mutter and from a gomel is usher, why does treifa go on the isser side, not the heter side? So he says, well, it's because treifas don't go off. Treifas are permanent. So the Gemara was teaching us a rule, the Poskim was teaching us a rule that if it's a kind of an isser that doesn't go off, like a gomel don't become kosher ever, then the Yotzeh is also usher. And if it's a kind of isser that could go off, like from a Ever Menachai, then the Yotzeh is mutter. In which case, treifa is obviously on the side of the gomel. Okay, so that's how he explains that's how he explains where the Shach got his din from. According to the Shach, like, where did this come from? Okay, just an organization. Anyhow, so
Ben Bakua, would I need a pasuk for the milk?
Oh, the Shiloh that Ben Bakua.
Would I need a pasuk for the milk?
A big Shiloh.
There, I don't have.
I don't want to talk about that. Okay, we'll talk about that. There's a Beis Yosef about that. Talk right from Beis Yosef like the Shach. For Gemara about a Ben Bakua. Talk about the chalav of a Ben Bakua. Okay. I don't know if that's what he meant, but anyhow. Okay, so besides to these besides to the Poskim that we said, besides to the Poskim that we said, besides to the people the names we mentioned already, I'll tell you other shittas that I know of who hold different ways. Okay, the following people are all machmir. There's a Pri Chodesh, Crazy Placey, those are both in our simon. Some certain a number of chuvas and a Maram who are all machmir, who say the din is like the Rosh, that Yotzeh from a kosher animal is not kosher unless it's milk or eggs. Other Yotzehs are not kosher. And no, if it's a pirsha, then pirsha could be much, but that's nothing. It could come from a dog also. It could be pirsha. Okay, and the Divrei Makil says like the Shach, and the Chazon Ish has like it's like a one-liner. He makes it like it's like pasha that the Shach is right. Okay, I don't have the words in front of me, but it's like of course, Kashrus goes down. What's looking at? 7 Yud days, cut involved. The Divrei Makil is Umer Gayim. Okay, that's the Divrei Makil. He's much like a one-liner. Like of course it's Kashrus goes down. Of course it's mutter. Okay, and the Pri Megadim on this din talks about this Machlokes. That's what's going on here in this din. It's this Machlokes. Pri Megadim says Lamaisa, it's a suffix, and it's a suffix of a deraisa. Because we're talking about if it's a Yotzeh from Ever Menachai is also it's a deraisa. This is the suffix. It's a suffix on the deraisa. His implication is that he wants to be machmir because of that. It's a suffix deraisa. It's a machlokes, and he implies that he wants to be machmir about that. And in Mitzvah Hashem, next time we're going to talk about two applications. I'm not saying that they're really totally on this, but two modern applications of things that people actually eat. Go figure. Yeah, fine. Next time, people that people actually eat that come down and totally in this machlokes.